The clock on the marble wall reads 3:13 in the morning. Rain hammers against the tall windows of Marcello's, an upscale Italian restaurant buried deep in Philadelphia's warehouse district, the kind of place that does not appear in any guidebook, the kind of place where the city's most dangerous men conduct business in candlelit booths while the rest of the world sleeps. Thunder cracks across the sky, violent and furious. Inside, the restaurant is closed. Dark. Empty except for 6 men in tailored black suits arranged like statues around the private room. Cigar smoke hangs in the air, thick and grey, mixing with the smell of aged whiskey and old money. The scent of rosemary from the kitchen lingers beneath it all, fading now as the hours stretch toward dawn. In the corner booth, the one with the best sight lines to every entrance, Lucian Romano sits with a glass of Macallan 25 balanced in his palm. He is 38 years old, broad-shouldered, with dark hair silvered at the temples. A scar runs along his jawline like a knife cut that never quite healed. His eyes are storm grey, the kind that have watched men beg for mercy they would never receive. The kind of eyes that calculate, that measure, that have learned to see weakness and crush it before it spreads. He wears an open white shirt beneath a charcoal suit that costs more than most people make in a month. A gold watch catches the light on his left wrist, heavy and ancient, passed down through men who built empires and buried their enemies in the same soil. Marco stands near the bar. Pietro guards the door. Vinny and 2 others positioned in the shadows, their hands never far from the weapons concealed beneath tailored jackets. This is the inner circle. The men who have learned to move through the world like ghosts, present and invisible at once. Lucian sets his glass down slowly on the marble table. The rim makes a soft sound against stone. He reaches for a cigar from the mahogany box beside him. He does not light it yet. He simply holds it, considering it, the way a general might consider a battlefield map. Around him, his men move with practiced silence. No one speaks. No one shuffles. No one looks directly at him unless he looks first. This is the code they have learned. This is the structure of survival. The heavy oak door at the restaurant's entrance bursts open. Rain floods in horizontally, wind-driven, cold. A shape stumbles through the darkness. A woman. Blonde hair plastered to her face in wet ropes. She is barefoot, leaving wet footprints and drops of blood on the Italian marble floor, a trail marking where she came from and how desperate she has become. Her white blouse is torn at the shoulder, and through the tear, blood seeps slowly down her arm. Her jeans are ripped at both knees, muddy, soaked through. But it is her face that stops the men in their tracks. One eye is swollen completely shut, purple and black, the kind of bruising that takes time to create, that requires repeated impact. Handprints circle her throat like a necklace, dark purple against her pale skin, each finger mark distinct, brutal, deliberate. Her split lips are bleeding. Her entire body trembles like a leaf caught in a storm that refuses to end. She staggers forward, catching herself on a chair back. The chair scrapes across the marble with a sound like a scream. 6 men in suits go absolutely, completely still. Hands move toward weapons. Eyes narrow. For 15 years, Vinny and Pietro have worked in this booth, in this room, for this man, and neither has ever seen this room violated like this. Never. Not once. The woman's knees buckle beneath her. She slides down the chair back toward the floor, her body moving like she might collapse entirely onto the marble. Please, she whispers through split lips, her voice barely a sound, barely a breath, trembling like a candle in the wind. Please, he's going to kill me. He said if I told anyone he would come back and he would finish it, and I have nowhere to go. I have no one, I have nothing, and my son, my baby, I need to get to my baby before he finds us, before he... Lightning cracks outside, violent and bright, illuminating her battered face for a single second, long enough for everyone in the room to see the full extent of the damage. Long enough to see that this woman has not simply been hit. She has been beaten. Methodically. With intention. Lucian Romano stares at her from his booth. His expression does not change. His face remains as still as a stone carving. But his fingers, gripping the armrest of his chair, tighten until his knuckles go white, the veins in his forearm rising beneath the skin like cords about to snap. For the first time in memory, Marco does not know what his boss will do next. The calculation is there, in those grey eyes, but underneath the calculation is something else. Something cold and dangerous, stirring in his chest like a blade being unsheathed. But what she did not know, what this broken, bleeding woman collapsing onto the marble floor of an upscale restaurant in the middle of the night could not possibly know, was that the man staring at her from that corner booth controlled every criminal enterprise from Baltimore to Boston. That his name was feared in cities she had never visited and in neighborhoods she would never survive. That the hands on her throat, the bruises on her body, had just painted a target on a man named Anthony Marchetti that could not be erased. That every second she stood in this room, something was already shifting in the underworld, machinery beginning to turn, gears beginning to mesh, and by dawn, the city itself would start to change. Before we continue, drop a like if this story hits you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming tomorrow. Now, let us go back to the beginning to understand how a woman with nothing ended up bleeding in front of the most feared man on the East Coast. 3 weeks earlier. Philadelphia's East Side, where the streetlights flicker and sometimes fail entirely, where the houses lean against each other like tired old men, where the poverty is not visible from highways but lives in the soft details, the cracked windows taped with plastic, the chain-link fences held together with wire, the cars that have not run in years sitting on cinder blocks in front yards. This is where Vivien Hartley lives. This is her kingdom. She is 29 years old but appears to be pushing 40, the way grief and exhaustion age a person from the inside out. Her blonde hair, once bright, has dulled to the color of wheat left too long in the sun. Her blue eyes, which must have been beautiful once, now carry a permanent weight behind them, the kind of weight that comes from losing too much too fast. She is thin, not by choice but by mathematics, by the simple equation of not enough money divided by too many mouths. Her hands are calloused, her nails broken short, her skin dry and cracked from work and worry. She wakes at 4:19 in the morning, 15 minutes before her alarm, because her body has learned that sleep is a luxury she cannot afford. The mattress beneath her is thin, worn through in places, the kind of mattress that remembers the shape of every person who has slept on it. Her small apartment is cold. The heating has not worked properly since November, and now it is late January, and the windows frost over every night no matter how many blankets she hangs. Her breath comes out in small clouds. In the room next to hers, her son Noah sleeps. He is 7 years old, with blonde hair like hers and her eyes too, and he does not know yet that his mother is drowning. That is what Vivien has decided. That is the choice she made when he was born. He will not know. He will grow up believing that his mother has things under control, that there is a plan, that the future is not a cliff edge she is approaching in the dark. She goes to the bathroom and looks at herself in the mirror. She does not linger. She has learned not to linger. There is nothing in that mirror that helps her, only reminders of what she has lost, her husband, David, who died 4 years ago when a drunk driver ran a red light at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. He was coming home from a second job he had taken to help pay for her mother's medical bills. He was 29 years old. The driver walked away with a suspended license. Vivien touches her own face gently, checking the skin, checking for signs of what the day might bring. She runs cold water and washes. She does not shower because hot water costs money and she is trying to save every penny. Every single penny. She has learned to rinse her hair under cold water and to count this as victory. By 5:08 in the morning, she is dressed. Her work uniform hangs on her frame like clothes on a scarecrow, the black shirt and black pants, both faded from washing, both showing the small repairs she has stitched herself. She braids her hair while standing, saving time, saving water, saving everything. In the kitchen, which is barely a kitchen at all, just a stove and refrigerator squeezed into a space barely wide enough for one person, she counts the money in her wallet. $43.72. She has 5 days until her next paycheck, and rent is due in 8 days, and Noah needs new shoes because his foot is growing and his current shoes have holes in the bottom that she has already patched twice. She does the math in her head, the math she has become very good at, the math of impossible choices. She can pay rent or she can buy the shoes. She cannot do both. She leaves Noah with Mrs. Chen, the woman who lives downstairs and watches him before school. Mrs. Chen charges $20 a day, money that should break Vivien entirely but somehow does not, because Mrs. Chen has been kind, because Mrs. Chen remembers what it is like to lose a husband, because Mrs. Chen looks at Noah's face and sees her own son, who is now grown and successful and living in California, and never calls. The bus comes at 6:45. Vivien is always there by 6:40 because the bus has learned not to wait. She stands in the cold, watching her breath cloud and disappear, cloud and disappear. The bus pulls up with a hiss of hydraulics. She boards. She swipes her card. She finds a seat. The driver does not acknowledge her. No one on the bus acknowledges her. She has become very good at being invisible. She works at the Silver Spoon, a diner on the edge of downtown where the coffee is burned and the eggs come from a box, and the clientele consists mostly of truckers passing through, businessmen eating breakfast before their day begins, and city workers grabbing food between shifts. She has worked there for 2 years. The pay is minimum wage plus tips, and the tips have become the arithmetic of her survival. This particular morning, a Thursday, she works the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift. She pours coffee that steams and burns her fingertips because she has forgotten her heat-resistant gloves at home, and she cannot afford to replace them, so she just lets her fingers burn. She carries plates that weigh as much as a small child. She smiles at men who do not tip. She refills water glasses for women who do not make eye contact. She exists in the spaces between other people's lives, moving quietly, never demanding, never present in any way that matters. By 2:45 p.m., she has earned $17.38 in tips. Added to the $43.72 she had this morning, she now has $61.10 to last until her paycheck arrives 5 days from now. $61 for food, for bus fare, for the heating bill that has arrived with a notice that says final disconnection warning. $61 that needs to stretch and somehow not tear. On the bus ride home, she sits by the window and watches the city pass by. Neighborhoods change as the bus moves. Wealth accumulates. Slowly, the storefronts improve. The cars parked on the streets are newer, shinier, less likely to have mismatched tires. The buildings stand straight instead of leaning. The people on the sidewalks walk differently, carry themselves differently, as if they have never considered whether they will be able to afford heat in January. She gets off at her stop. The neighborhood shifts back immediately. The sun is starting to set early, the way it does in winter. The light turns gold and then orange and then red, and the quality of this light, for a moment, makes everything beautiful, even the poverty, even the struggle, even the impossible mathematics of her life. She picks up Noah from Mrs. Chen's apartment. He runs to her, 7 years old and still light enough to lift, and she holds him against her chest and breathes in the smell of his hair, which smells like the cheap shampoo Mrs. Chen uses, and childhood and hope. He tells her about his day. He tells her that he made a drawing in art class and that Samuel pushed him on the playground and that he is hungry. She listens to all of it. She holds all of it. She makes a promise to herself that he will not feel her fear, he will not know about the money, he will believe that his mother has everything under control. That night, she makes dinner from rice and beans, the same dinner they have had 4 times this week. She uses the very last of an onion she has been rationing. It makes the rice taste almost like it has flavor. They eat together at the small table in their small kitchen. Noah eats quickly, the way children do who do not yet understand that food is not always guaranteed. Vivien eats slowly, trying to make the meal last, trying to fill the hunger with motion and time instead of actual sustenance. After dinner, she washes the dishes in water so cold her hands go numb. She dries them with a towel that has been washed so many times it is barely more than thread. She puts Noah to bed, and she reads to him from a library book, a story about a boy and a dragon, and his eyes close before the story ends. She watches his face in the darkness, peaceful, untroubled, and she feels something crack open inside her chest. Back in the living room, she pulls out an envelope from the drawer where she keeps her important papers. Inside is a foreclosure notice. It arrived 3 days ago in an official envelope with the bank's logo on it. The house she and David had saved for 7 years to buy, the house they moved into 2 months before he died, the house that was supposed to be her anchor, her permanent thing in a world of impermanence, the bank is taking it back. She has missed 6 payments. She has 60 days to produce $22,000 or the house will be sold at auction. 60 days. $22,000. She looks at the number and feels the cliff edge of the future getting very close indeed. At that same moment, 3 miles away, in a penthouse office overlooking the city, Anthony Marchetti is telling his uncle that he has found a way to hurt Lucian Romano. The minivan shudders in the parking lot behind the laundromat on Market Street, Philadelphia. Rain hammers the windshield in sheets, summer thunder rolling across the sky like the sound of the world breaking open. Inside, Vivien Hartley sits motionless in the driver's seat, her hands trembling as she counts the crumpled bills spread across her lap for the 4th time tonight. $78. That is everything she has left in the world. Her 7-year-old son Noah sleeps in the back seat, his small body curled beneath her coat, his face peaceful in the way only children can be peaceful, untouched by the knowledge of what is coming. His breathing is steady, innocent, unaware that his mother has been awake for 37 hours straight, working double shifts at the diner, cleaning offices at night, doing whatever work exists for a woman with a high school diploma and a mountain of debt that is not even hers to carry. Vivien unfolds the eviction notice again, though she has memorized every word so completely that the letters have burned themselves into the inside of her eyelids. The paper is already soft from handling, the crease is worn thin like it has been unfolded 1,000 times even though it arrived only 3 days ago. 5 days to produce $200,000 or they take the house. The house she and David had saved for 7 years to purchase, the house they moved into 2 months before he collapsed on the kitchen floor with a heart attack that took him in 4 minutes, the house that was supposed to be permanent, supposed to be safe, supposed to be the one thing that would not leave her. But David left. And now the bank is leaving. And soon everything will be gone. The debts are his, discovered only after his death in documents hidden in a filing cabinet beneath old tax returns. Gambling debts. Co-signed loans in her name. 30,000 here, 18,000 there, markers from casinos in Atlantic City, poker games in basement rooms where men with dead eyes had watched her husband lose more than his house, he had lost her future too, had gambled away his son's childhood before he even knew he was going to have a son. The creditors do not care that Vivien knew nothing. The law does not care. The bank does not care. The debts are hers now, and the collection notices arrive in envelopes with logos from law firms, and the numbers keep growing like a cancer she cannot cut out. She pulls the prayer card from her pocket, the one her grandmother pressed into her hand 23 years ago at her baptism. The edges are soft and worn from years of handling, the image of St. Christopher nearly faded to nothing. She whispers to the saint, to God, to the universe, to anyone who might be listening in this moment of absolute desperation. Just show me a way through this. Any way at all. The storm intensifies. Lightning cracks across the sky like a blade splitting the darkness, and for a moment the entire city is illuminated white, every building sharp and clear, and then the darkness swallows everything again. Vivien has been sitting in this minivan for 6 minutes. She needs to get to her cleaning shift at the office building downtown. For hours of work, paid in cash, $6 an hour, no taxes taken out, no questions asked. $24. Added to her evening shift at the diner, if she did not eat lunch, if she took every coin left on every table, if she stayed 30 minutes late without clocking in, she could maybe make $90 today. But she needs $200,000 in 5 days, and the mathematics of this fact sits on her chest like a stone. She turns the key in the ignition. The minivan sputters, coughs, grinds. The engine catches for 1 moment and then dies completely. She tries again. Nothing but a grinding sound, mechanical and hopeless. Again. Dead silence. Again. Nothing. The gas gauge reads half a tank, but the half tank has to last through the weekend. She cannot afford to run the air conditioning even though the heat is oppressive, even though sweat runs down her spine and collects at the base of her neck. The motor is old, 15 years old, held together with prayer and duct tape and the sheer willpower of someone who cannot afford to replace it. And now it has chosen this moment, this night, this storm, to finally surrender. Vivien sits in the darkness with her hands gripping the steering wheel. Her knuckles are white. Her breathing is shallow. She looks back at Noah, still sleeping, still safe, still unaware. She cannot wake him. She cannot tell him that the engine has died. She cannot explain what comes next because she does not know what comes next. Then, through the rain, headlights appear. Not one vehicle. Not two. 5 black SUVs materialize from the storm like predators emerging from the water, moving in formation, moving with purpose, moving toward her. They do not slow down. They surround her minivan in a perfect perimeter, cutting off every direction, every escape. The rain bounces off their windows and their hoods and their tires. The engines rumble like something alive, something dangerous, something that has found what it was hunting. Vivien's heart stops completely. For a moment she cannot breathe. For a moment she is certain that death has arrived, that the universe has finally decided to collect on the debts her dead husband left behind, that these men have come for collateral and she is the only collateral she has left. Men pour out of the vehicles, their suits expensive and soaked instantly, their movements coordinated, practiced, purposeful. There are 12 of them, maybe 15, maybe more, she cannot count, cannot think, her mind has gone white with a terror so complete it erases every thought except one: protect the child. The man closest to her window is tall, muscular, with dark hair slicked back from his forehead and rain running down his scarred face. He taps on her window with a hand covered in gold rings, his knuckles rapping against the glass with a sound like a bullet. Vinny. That is his name, though she does not know it yet. He works for Lucian Romano, though she does not know that either. He has tapped on the windows of 100 cars in 100 situations, and his face shows nothing, reveals nothing, promises nothing but compliance. Engine trouble. His voice is mild, almost friendly, almost the voice of someone who stops to help strangers in the rain. But his eyes are not friendly. His eyes are the eyes of a man accustomed to obedience. Vivien's voice comes out as barely a whisper, barely a breath, barely a sound. Yes. It won't start. Your son in the back. How did he know about Noah? How can he see into the darkness of the back seat? Is there a camera? Are they watching? Vivien's hands grip the steering wheel so tightly her fingernails cut crescents into her palms. Yes. She cannot lie. She cannot think of a lie. Lying requires coherence, and coherence has abandoned her. Vinny glances back at one of the other men, a man with a scar running from his eye to his cheekbone, and they exchange a look that means something, communicates something, carries weight that Vivien cannot decipher. Then Vinny opens her door. He does this without asking permission. The door swings open and the rain sprays into the vehicle, soaking everything, and Vivien flinches backward. We can help you, Vinny says. Our boss is headed to dinner. There is a restaurant 6 blocks from here. We will give you a ride. Get out of the rain. This is not an offer. This is a statement. This is a fact being told to her as if she has already agreed. Vivien looks at Noah in the back seat, still asleep, still covered with her coat, his small hand curled into a fist. She looks at the prayer card still clutched in her other hand. Saint Christopher, the protector of travelers. She has asked for a way through this. The universe, it seems, has sent 12 men in expensive suits and black SUVs. She unbuckles her seatbelt. She puts the prayer card back in her pocket. She slides out of the minivan and the rain immediately soaks through her thin shirt, running down her spine in cold rivulets. One of the other men, Pietro, moves toward the back seat to collect Noah. Vivien makes a small sound, a sound of protest, but she does not move. She does not fight. She follows Vinny toward the nearest SUV, and he holds the door open, and she climbs inside to the smell of leather and expensive cologne and the leather seats that cost more than her monthly rent. The door closes. The rain is muffled now, distant. Through the tinted windows, she cannot see the laundromat anymore, cannot see her minivan, cannot see anything except the shapes of the other vehicles and the headlights cutting through the storm like blades. Where are we going? Her voice is steady now, or almost steady. She is channeling something, some reserve of motherhood, some animal instinct that knows she must not show fear, must not reveal weakness, must protect her child at any cost. To the boss, Vinny says from the driver's seat. Just a short ride. You will be safe. But the way he says it, the way his eyes meet hers in the rearview mirror for just a moment, suggests that safe is a relative term, a suggestion, a promise that applies to some people and not to others. The SUV begins to move through the rain-soaked streets of Philadelphia. Behind them, the other vehicles follow in formation, moving deeper into the city, moving toward something that Vivien cannot yet see, something that is already waiting for her, something that has no idea that a woman with $78 and a worn prayer card and a child in the back seat is about to collide with it like a blade through water. The storm continues above them, indifferent, eternal, uncaring whether mercy or cruelty arrives first. The rain hammered against the minivan's windshield in relentless waves, and Vivien Hartley's hands trembled on the steering wheel as she guided the sputtering vehicle through the empty streets of North Philadelphia at 3 in the morning. The engine coughed, stuttered, died. She turned the key again. Nothing. Just the sound of her own breathing, sharp and panicked, mixing with the drum of water on metal. In the back seat, Noah slept, his small chest rising and falling beneath his SpongeBob blanket, unaware that his mother had exactly $78 in her wallet and 5 days remaining before everything they owned would be repossessed. She cracked the window 2 inches, rain immediately spraying across her face, and peered into the darkness. The street was abandoned, industrial, flanked by the skeletal frames of warehouse buildings that had been empty for years. Her phone showed no signal. Of course it didn't. Headlights cut through the downpour like searchlights, and Vivien's heart seized. A black SUV approached, slowing, stopping behind her disabled minivan. A man emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than her monthly rent. This was Vinny, though she did not know his name yet. He approached her window with measured steps, rainwater streaming from his hair. Need help, hmm? His eyes were scanning, professional, assessing threats the way men who worked in certain worlds learned to assess everything. His voice was steady, almost kind, but there was something beneath it, something that suggested he asked very few questions to which he actually wanted answers. My engine just died, Vivien said, her voice thin. I'm trying to get home. My son is asleep and I just need. The sound came first. Tires screeching against wet asphalt, violent, wrong. Another SUV rounded the corner, moving too fast, too aggressive. It skidded to a halt, and 3 men poured out, raincoats flapping, expensive shoes splashing through puddles. The one leading them was handsome in a way that made your skin crawl, angular face, dark eyes burning with the specific cruelty that comes from money without any soul to balance it. Anthony Marchetti, 31 years old, nephew of the Marchetti crime family, wore a watch that cost $70,000 on his wrist like a threat. Well, Anthony called out, ignoring the rain that pounded against his designer jacket. Vivien Hartley. I have been looking everywhere for you. Vivien's blood turned to ice water in her veins. She knew that voice. She had heard it 2 weeks ago when this man showed up at her door, smiling with his teeth but not his eyes, claiming that Marcus owed his uncle $60,000 from a poker game in Atlantic City. She had refused to cooperate. She had told him to leave. She had locked the door and sat with Noah in the dark, listening to Anthony laugh outside, a sound like breaking glass. Get away from my car, she said, but her voice fractured on the second word. Anthony laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the rain. You think you can hide from me? You think Marchetti money just disappears? You think a woman with nothing can tell a Marchetti no? He gestured with one hand, a casual movement, and his 3 men advanced toward the minivan like wolves recognizing prey. Vinnie stepped between them and Anthony, his body suddenly a barrier, his hand moving subtly toward his jacket. "This is Romano territory. You need to leave. Now." "Romano?" Anthony's confidence wavered for only an instant. Then it returned, bloated, arrogant. "Tell your boss Anthony Marchetti does what he wants. Tell him I'm taking the woman. Tell him I'm taking her because he doesn't own this city, and I'm about to prove it." One of Anthony's men yanked the minivan's door open. Vivien moved backward, but there was nowhere to go. Strong hands gripped her arms, pulled her out into the rain. She screamed, a sound of pure animal terror, and in the back seat, Noah woke. His crying began soft, confused, then escalated into the wail of a child who understood on some primitive level that danger had arrived. Pietro appeared from somewhere, his massive frame moving toward the minivan's back seat, shielding Noah, speaking in a voice too calm to be human. "It's okay, small one. You stay here with me. You are safe." Anthony's fist connected with Vivien's face. Once. Twice. Pain exploded behind her left eye, and she tasted copper, tasted her own blood flooding into her mouth. His hands closed around her throat, his fingers digging in with the casual brutality of someone who had never been told no and never would be. "You're coming with me," he hissed. "Lucian Romano thinks he owns this city? I'm going to use you to prove he doesn't. I'm going to use you to show everyone that the Marchetti family doesn't bow to anyone." But Vinnie's gun was already drawn, the sound of the hammer cocking cutting through the rain like a bell. "Release her. Now." Anthony dropped her, releasing her throat, but not before her head cracked against the minivan's frame. Stars exploded in her vision. He ran, his men scattering, disappearing into the rain-soaked darkness like roaches when the light comes on. The sound of their car door slamming, tires spinning, engine roaring away. Vivien collapsed into Vinnie's arms, her breathing ragged, her entire body shaking with shock and adrenaline and the animal knowledge that she had just been seconds away from disappearing. Her left eye throbbed, already swelling, already beginning to close. She could taste blood and rain. "Get the boy secured," Vinnie said into a small radio attached to his collar. "We're taking them both to the boss. Now." He helped Vivien toward the nearest SUV, his hand on her elbow firm but not unkind, and she moved without thinking, without choosing, because the only thing her mind could process was that Noah was safe, that her baby boy was alive, that whatever happened next could not be worse than what had already happened. The SUV smelled of leather and expensive cologne, the leather seats worth more than her monthly rent, the interior so quiet it seemed like a church. Through the tinted windows, the city of Philadelphia blurred past, rainy, indifferent, uncaring. The other vehicles followed in formation, moving deeper into the industrial district, moving toward something Vivien could not yet see, something that was already waiting for her in the private booth of a restaurant called Marcello's. By the time they arrived, Vivien's eye had swollen completely shut, her throat marked with purple handprints that looked like a necklace of bruises, and her entire body had begun to shake with delayed shock. Pietro carried Noah inside, the boy clutching a stuffed bear, his eyes wide with a fear that would never quite leave him. The restaurant was closed, but it was lit from within, and the men who worked for Lucian Romano stood in the shadows like statues. Vivien was escorted through the main dining room, past empty tables with white tablecloths, past paintings of Italian countryside that cost more than her entire house. Her shoes left wet prints on the marble floor. At the back of the restaurant, in a private booth surrounded by mahogany paneling, sat a man. Lucian Romano was 6'1", with shoulders that seemed to carry the weight of an entire underworld, and he wore a charcoal suit with an open white shirt that revealed the muscled chest of someone who had survived every attempt on his life through sheer physical will. His hair was dark, silvered slightly at the temples, and his eyes were the color of a storm about to break. A thin scar ran from the corner of his left eye to his cheekbone, a permanent record of a violence so old it had become part of his face like a birthmark. He studied Vivien for exactly 10 seconds. His men, Marco and Enzo, stood frozen. In 15 years, they had never seen their boss's expression change the way it changed in that moment. "Sit," Lucian said. His voice was quiet, controlled, dangerous, like the stillness before thunder. Vinnie helped Vivien into the leather booth. She winced at every movement, at the small explosions of pain that traveled through her body. Her breath came in short gasps through her mouth because her throat was too damaged to breathe normally. "My son," she whispered. "Safe," Lucian said. "In the kitchen with Pietro. Eating pasta. Unharmed." He paused. "What is his name?" "Noah." Tears began streaming down her face, mixing with blood and rain. "He's 7. He's asthmatic. He gets scared easily. He will have everything he needs." Lucian leaned forward slightly, and something shifted in his eyes, something almost human. "Who did this to you?" "Anthony Marchetti," Vivien whispered. He said he was going to use me to prove something to you. I don't even know you. I have never met you. I don't know why." "Tell me everything," Lucian said. "From the beginning. Your name. Your life. All of it." And so Vivien told him. She told him about Marcus, her husband, who had died 6 months ago in a car accident that was ruled accidental but which Vivien had never quite believed. She told him about the gambling debts that had accumulated while he was alive, debt she did not even know existed until men in dark suits began appearing at her door, showing her papers with numbers that made no sense. $200,000. The number was so large it had stopped being real. 200,000, she repeated, her voice breaking. "I have $78 in my pocket. That is all I have in the world. $78. The bank gave me 5 days to produce the full amount or they foreclose. My house, everything, gone." She worked 3 jobs, she explained. Office cleaning at 5 in the morning, grocery store stocking at night, weekend waitressing when she could find shifts. Noah's asthma medication cost $40 a month that she did not have. The power company had threatened to shut off the lights 3 times this year. She had been rationing food, eating the leftovers from the restaurant where she worked, whatever the manager allowed her to take home. "I am nobody," Vivien said, and the words seemed to cost her something to speak. "I have nothing to offer you. I'm just a woman with a sick child and a dead husband's debts. I don't know why you would help me. Why would you help anyone like me?" Lucian reached across the table, stopping inches from her hand. In 15 years, Marco had never seen him make this gesture toward anyone. "You are a mother protecting her child," he said. "That is not nobody. That is everything." At the same hour, in a penthouse apartment on the 40th floor of a building in Center City, Anthony Marchetti paced his living room like a caged animal. The apartment was all glass and steel and modern art that meant nothing, and he held a phone pressed to his ear, his voice tight with panic and anger. Outside, Philadelphia sprawled beneath him, lights reflecting off the wet streets. "Uncle Vincent, I had her," Anthony said. Romano's men interfered. They came out of nowhere. His uncle's voice crackled through the phone, fury transforming into something colder. "You touched her? On Romano's territory? You stupid boy. Do you understand what you have just done? You declared war on a man who once buried his own brother alive for betrayal. Do you comprehend the magnitude of your mistake?" "He doesn't scare me," Anthony said, but his voice wavered. "I'm a Marchetti. We don't bow to anyone. Not even Romano." "You will fix this," his uncle said. "Or you will not live to see 32. Understand?" The line went dead. Meanwhile, at 9:38 in the morning, as rain continued to fall on Philadelphia's gray streets, Sophie Langford sat in her glass-walled office on the 35th floor of a building that bore her family name. She was 34 years old, elegant in the way that old money teaches you to be elegant, with blonde hair styled in the kind of perfection that took 3 hours each week to maintain. Her office overlooked the entire city, and everything in it, the Italian marble desk, the original paintings, the Persian rug that had belonged to a sultan's wife, spoke of the kind of wealth that did not worry about anything because it had learned long ago that money solved problems. Her assistant appeared with a tablet. On the screen was a photograph, a woman exiting Marcello's restaurant at dawn, her face swollen, wearing clothes clearly borrowed from someone else, holding a small boy's hand. "Who is this?" Sophie's voice was silk-wrapped around steel. "Vivien Hartley." The woman was photographed leaving Romano's restaurant this morning with his security detail. "We don't have much information yet, but—" Sophie did not move. Her hand reached out and set down her coffee with trembling fingers. She and Lucian had a history, one she had spent 5 years trying to erase. A calculated romance, a woman attempting to soften a man who could not be softened, an ending that had left her humiliated and bitter and burning with a rage that had never quite cooled. "Find out everything about her," Sophie said quietly. "Everything. Her job, her family, her finances, her secrets. I want to know what she eats for breakfast. I want to know if she is left-handed or right-hand. Everything." "Of course." Sophie turned back to her window, overlooking the city that had always been hers, and something cold and beautiful stirred in her chest. A plan, perhaps. An opportunity. A way to remind Lucian Romano that no one took what belonged to Sophie Langford and walked away unmarked. Back at Marcello's, Lucian made a phone call. "The debt," he said quietly. "The 200,000. I want it purchased. All of it. Transfer it to my accounts within the hour." On the other end of the line, his accountant said nothing for a long moment. Then, carefully, "Boss, you're buying her debt? A woman you met tonight?" "I am," Lucian said. "And triple her salary. She works for me now. Security consulting." It was a fiction, they both knew it, but it was also the kind of fiction that made things true simply by being spoken aloud. When Vivien emerged from the restaurant's bathroom, cleaned up, her eyes still swollen shut but the blood washed away, Lucian was waiting. He gestured to the seat across from him. "I heard what you said," Vivien began. "On the phone. I can't accept." "You can," Lucian said, "and you will. Because Anthony Marchetti made you my business when he touched you on my street. And I protect what is mine." The words hung in the rain-soaked air between them. Vivien opened her mouth to argue, but something in his expression stopped her. There was no cruelty there. There was only certainty, and a gentleness that seemed impossible coming from a man who wore violence the way other men wore cologne. 3 days after Anthony Marchetti's fists found her face in that warehouse district alley, Vivien Hartley stood in the parking lot of Riverside Elementary School, waiting for Noah to emerge from the aftercare program. The September sun had turned the asphalt into a mirror of heat and light, but she felt nothing of its warmth. Her left eye had faded to a sickly yellow-green, the swelling finally allowing her to see through it again, though the vision remained clouded, as if she were looking at the world through water. The mothers stood in their cluster by the gymnasium entrance, the way they always did, designer sunglasses and linen blouses and the kind of casual wealth that never needed to announce itself. Vivien had never belonged to their circle. She came, she picked up her son, she left. That had always been enough. Today, something changed. She watched as one woman turned her head and said something to the others. Then, like a door closing in sequence, they turned. All of them. In unison. Shoulders angling away from her. Eyes forward. The message was wordless and absolute: you do not exist here. The prayer card felt thin in her pocket, worn soft as tissue paper from the countless times she had pressed it between her palms. St. Jude for hopeless cases. She had worn it for 3 years, and 3 years had still not been enough. Noah emerged from the double doors, backpack slung over one shoulder, lunchbox in his small hand. When he saw her, his face transformed. That was what kept her standing in the parking lot instead of running. That was what made her smile despite the acid burning in her throat. "Mommy!" He ran toward her, sneakers slapping against concrete, and she knelt to catch him, pulling him close, breathing in the smell of playground dirt and the apple juice from his juice box. "Hi, baby. How was school? Miss Henderson said I did a really good job on my letters. And I made you a picture." She pulled back to look at him. 5 years old. Still small enough to fit in her lap. Still young enough to believe that his mother had the power to fix anything. The thought made her chest splinter. I bet it's beautiful. Let's go home and put it on the refrigerator. But when she stood, one of the mothers approached. Jennifer something. A woman whose nail salon bills probably cost more than Vivien's entire weekly grocery budget. Her smile was tight, professional, the smile of someone delivering bad news with regret she did not actually feel. Vivien, we just wanted to say, the school has received some complaints about your situation. We think it might be better if Noah looked at other options for aftercare. There's a wonderful program across town. Very well reviewed. The words fell like stones. Vivien's mouth opened. Nothing came out. It's nothing personal, Jennifer continued. The other parents just felt, well, they have concerns about the kind of people who might be around their children. The kind of people. Mafia. The word sat there unspoken but louder than a gunshot. Vivien took Noah's hand. Thank you for letting me know. She drove home with her son singing softly to himself, oblivious, and by the time they reached the small apartment on Mercy Street, the one Lucian's people had secured for her, paid 6 months in advance, though she still didn't fully understand why, her hands had stopped shaking. The notice was taped to her minivan the next morning. Spray paint in red and black. Mafia whore, letters 2 feet tall, dripping like blood. The words were still wet, still glistening in the early light. Vivien stood in her apartment's parking lot in her waitress uniform, staring at them, and something inside her folded like paper. That afternoon, she arrived at Continental Cleaning Services at 2 p.m. for her shift. She had worked there for 4 years. The pay was minimum wage, the hours brutal, but it was work, and work was dignity. The manager, Dale, a man with a perpetually sunburnt neck, stopped her at the door. Vivien, I need to talk to you. Of course. We're going to have to let you go. Effective immediately. No reason. No warning. Just the door closing. Dale, I don't understand. My performance reviews. I don't need to explain myself. You're done here. At the grocery store, the manager asked her to leave. A complaint. Her presence was upsetting customers. She had one full basket of items, milk, eggs, bread, the cheapest cheese. She abandoned it all at the checkout and walked out without a word. By Thursday, every door had closed. The diner where she picked up dinner shifts had her number blocked. The laundromat owner no longer acknowledged her when she came in. Even Mrs. Chen at the corner store, who had given Noah free cookie samples for 2 years, suddenly couldn't meet her eyes. The poison had a name, though Vivien didn't know it yet. Sophie Langford, sitting in a penthouse office overlooking the city, had orchestrated every moment of this destruction with the precision of someone who understood that cruelty required planning. Sophie had made phone calls. Sophie had sent emails. Sophie had reminded every business owner in Vivien's orbit that associating with a woman tied to Lucian Romano came with a cost. Sophie, who had held Lucian's heart once, before he discarded it like everything else he tired of, wanted the world to know exactly what happened to the women who took what belonged to her. That night, Vivien returned to the apartment with Noah at 7 p.m. Lucian's people had upgraded the security, men posted in the lobby, men stationed in the stairwell. She didn't ask questions about this. She had learned not to. She was fumbling with her keys when the stairwell door opened. Anthony Marchetti stood in the shadows of the landing below, and with him came 2 men whose faces she recognized from the night he had beat her in that alley. Their eyes glittered with the kind of hunger that made her stomach drop like she was falling. "Hello, Vivien." Anthony's voice was soft, conversational, which was somehow worse than if he had shouted. "I've been hoping you'd be home alone." She stepped back toward her door, but Anthony was already climbing the stairs, boots ringing on metal steps, a sound like a death knell. "You think Lucian Romano is going to protect you forever?" He moved closer, his breath sour and hot. "That's very naive. Men like him, they collect broken things and then they discard them. I'm giving you a choice. Come with me tonight willingly, and maybe I let you live. Fight me, Anne. He grabbed her wrist. The pain was electric, sharp, traveling up her arm like lightning. Vivien screamed. Noah was inside the apartment, and the sound cut through her as worse than any physical blow. Her baby hearing his mother's terror. She twisted, pulled, tried to wrench her arm free, but Anthony's grip was like iron. One of the men grabbed her from behind, his hand over her mouth, muffling her screams into his palm. He smelled like cigarettes and sweat. She bit down, tasting blood, but his grip only tightened. They were dragging her toward the stairwell when the apartment building seemed to come alive. Men emerged from the shadows like smoke taking form. Vivien recognized Vinny at the front, his face a carved stone, and behind him for others she had never seen before but understood immediately. These were Lucian's men. The kind of men who existed in the spaces between law and lawlessness. Guns were drawn. The sound was the distinctive click of hammers being cocked, a sound like a prayer answered in the wrong language. "Let her go," Vinny said. His voice was not loud. It did not need to be. The men holding Vivien froze. In the fluorescent hallway light, she could feel Anthony's confidence shattering like glass. "You think this is over?" Vinny continued. "You think you can touch what belongs to the boss and breathe tomorrow?" Anthony and his men released her and bolted, running down the stairs like animals fleeing a fire. Vinny and his men did not pursue. They didn't need to. They had made their point. The message was written in the air between them in letters of violence and certainty. Vivien stood in the hallway, shaking, her wrist already darkening with bruises in the perfect shape of Anthony's fingers. Behind her, she could hear Noah crying from inside the apartment, could hear the terror in his small voice calling for her. She turned and ran to him. Later, much later, after she had held Noah until his breathing steadied into sleep, after she had pressed ice to her wrist and stared at nothing for 2 hours, Vivien stood on the apartment's small balcony in the dark. The city lights spread below her like a map of a world she had never been part of. The night was warm despite it being summer, but she could not stop shaking. Her hands gripped the iron railing with white knuckles. In the glass door behind her, she could see her reflection, a woman she didn't recognize. Yellow-green bruises fading across her face. Eyes hollow with exhaustion. A life that had come to nothing, that had less than nothing, that was now a debt owed to a man whose world was built on violence. The prayer card was in her pocket, still damp from when she had been holding it in her clenched fist. "Maybe they're right," she whispered to the empty air. "Maybe I should just disappear. Take Noah and run. It would be easier. It would be." Then she heard it. From inside the apartment, through the open window. Noah laughing in his sleep. That pure, weightless sound of a child who felt safe for the first time in months. Not a crying sound, not a frightened sound. Pure, crystalline laughter, the sound of dreams without nightmares. One tiny sound. It stopped her falling completely. It was a rope dropped into darkness, and she grabbed it with both hands. At 5:41 in the morning, 12 federal agents in tactical gear and 6 men in black Lucian Romano business suits converged on Anthony Marchetti's penthouse in Center City. The battering ram hit the door and it exploded inward like the end of a prayer. Flashbangs detonated in the darkness. The air filled with the shout of federal authority. Badges raised like weapons. Assault rifles positioned at precarious angles, every angle an angle of death. Anthony stumbled from his bedroom in silk pajamas that cost more than Vivien's entire monthly rent, his face slack with confusion transforming into horror in the time it took him to understand that his world had ended. FBI. On the ground. Now. An agent threw him down. The floor was cold. Anthony's face hit marble, and in that moment, every protective structure he had ever built, his uncle's power, his family's connections, his own desperate arrogance, evaporated like morning fog. Another agent read his rights. The words were a funeral hymn. Vinny stood in the hallway, watching, arms crossed over his chest, his expression revealing nothing. He had seen better men than Anthony Marchetti break. He would see worse. This was simply the mathematics of consequence. The elevator doors opened. Lucian Romano stepped out, impeccable in a charcoal suit despite the early hour, his silver cufflinks catching the emergency lights. His face bore no satisfaction, no triumph. Only a kind of terrible certainty, the expression of a man watching a law of nature take effect. He crouched beside Anthony's prone form. Their eyes met at the same level. The powerful man bent low to address the powerless, a gesture of such intimacy it felt almost like mercy. "You threatened a woman under my protection," Lucian said, his voice deep and solid like an oath. "You declared war. This is me ending it." Anthony's voice broke like a child's. "My uncle will." "Your uncle helped us build the case," Lucian said. "Wire fraud. Racketeering. Human trafficking. He decided you were too stupid to protect. 40 years, Anthony. Federal prison. No parole. No appeals. No mercy." The agents hauled him to his feet. By 7 a.m., every news channel in Philadelphia was broadcasting footage of Anthony Marchetti in handcuffs, led from a penthouse in broad daylight. His face was on screens everywhere, the face of a man whose life had just become 40 years of concrete and fluorescent lights and the knowledge that his own uncle had fed him to the wolves. But the destruction was not finished. That same afternoon, Lucian's investigator delivered a folder to the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Ledger, to the major networks. The contents were meticulous and damning: emails from Sophie Langford to school administrators, text messages to business owners, recorded phone calls dripping with threats and manipulation. Every weapon she had used against Vivien, carefully documented, presented as evidence of a conspiracy to destroy a woman's livelihood. By evening, Sophie Langford's corporate board demanded her resignation. Her position at Langford Holdings was terminated for cause. Her social circle, the women she had ruled, the spaces she had owned, the power she had wielded, abandoned her in a single afternoon. Phone calls went unanswered. Invitations ceased. The very people who had deferred to her for decades acted as if she had become invisible. Sophie, who understood that cruelty required planning, suddenly understood that so did justice. She did not face prison. The law had limits. But her reputation, the only thing she valued, the only thing she had ever truly owned, had been dismantled systematically and permanently, piece by piece, until nothing remained but a woman standing alone in a penthouse, realizing that she had built her entire life on sand. 1 year later, spring sunshine floods a penthouse in Philadelphia's newest luxury building, the kind of place where the city spreads beneath you like a map of possibility, where the air tastes like money and second chances. Vivien Hartley stands at floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. She is 30 years old now, though the hardness that lived in her face has softened into something different, not gentleness, but strength. Her dark hair is styled, pulled back in a way that shows the architecture of her face. She wears a tailored navy suit, the fabric expensive, moving like water when she turns. The bruises are memory now. The fear that once lived behind her eyes has been replaced with something sharper, wiser, like a blade that has been tested and found its edge. On her desk, a phone screen glows. The banking app shows a number that would have seemed impossible from that night 12 months ago, $847,000 in savings. She built it herself, every dollar earned through a security consulting firm that bears her name. Lucian Romano insisted she actually learn the business, refused to hand it to her. He taught her threat assessment, corporate protection, the architecture of danger and defense. She discovered she had a talent for seeing what others missed, the weak point in a system, the person who did not belong, the moment just before something breaks. Noah is 8 now. He attends the most prestigious private school in Philadelphia, his asthma managed with medication, with fresh air, with a kind of care that comes from abundance rather than desperation. The boy is thriving. His teachers report kindness, curiosity, a child who has learned that the world can be safe. The $200,000 debt is distant history, a number from another lifetime. On her desk sits the worn prayer card, the one her mother left her, the one she clutched through every impossible night. Now it rests in a frame of brushed silver. She looks at it sometimes when the phone rings, when the name of a new client arrives, when she has to remember that the woman who owns $78.05 is not the woman who stands in this penthouse. She has not seen Lucian Romano in 12 months. After Anthony Marchetti's arrest, after the federal agents hauled him away in handcuffs, after every news channel in the country broadcast his face, Lucian stepped back completely. Money arrived through lawyers. Opportunities were delivered through intermediaries. Protection came from guards she never saw, men positioned on her street, in her building, invisible but present. But he did not appear. He did not call. He sent no messages written in his own hand. Vinnie delivered a message once, standing in her small office with his hands folded, his expression careful. Boss says you need space to become who you're meant to be without his shadow. She had wanted to ask what that meant. She had not. The penthouse door opens. She assumes it is Noah returning from his tutoring session, his backpack filled with books, his mind occupied with mathematics and history. But the reflection in the window shows something else. Shows a man in the doorway. Shows Lucian Romano. He is different somehow. Older not in years but in bearing. Weight sits on his shoulders like a coat he cannot remove. His dark hair has more silver at the temples. His face is the same face, sharp cheekbones, scar running from eye to cheekbone, eyes that burn with intelligence and something else, something that might be longing. He wears a charcoal suit, expensive, the fabric moving like silk when he steps inside. He holds a single white rose. Their eyes meet in the reflection of the glass. Neither moves. The silence stretches like a held breath. The city sprawls below them, 13 million lives happening at once, and in this room there is nothing but stillness. You rebuilt yourself, Lucian says quietly. His voice is deeper than she remembers, rough like he has not used it much. Like he has spent the last year in silence. I knew you would. Vivien turned slowly. The movement takes 1,000 years and a single moment. You disappeared. You needed to know your strength came from you. Not from me. Not from my money or my name. He steps closer and the space between them feels like a thing with weight, with presence. I bought your freedom, but you built your life. There is a difference. Why come back now? Lucian's control cracks visibly, like ice breaking under pressure. His jaw tightens. His hands grip the rose stem so hard it should shatter. Because I have stayed away for 12 months, and every day was harder than the last. Because my brother betrayed me 5 years ago, sold our family to enemies, and I had to choose between mercy and survival. I chose survival. I buried him alive. I have been alone in the dark ever since. And then you came into my world, broken, terrified, with nothing but courage and a worn prayer card, and you showed me that darkness does not have to win. He takes another step. He is close enough that she can smell him, the expensive cologne mixed with rain, with something clean underneath, something human. When you stumbled into my restaurant at 3:22 that morning, bleeding, barely able to stand, but still fighting, still protecting your son even when you could barely breathe, I saw something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. Proof that mercy is not weakness. That one person can matter. That you matter. Vivien's eyes begin to glisten. You saved my life. And you saved mine. You just did not know it. He hands her the white rose. When his fingers brush hers, she feels the touch like electricity, like a door opening. Like something that was locked suddenly becoming possible. They move to the balcony. The evening is clear, the sky turning gold at the edges. The city below pulses with light, buildings becoming visible as the sun descends, people moving through the streets far below, the entire machinery of human life turning beneath them. I am a man who built an empire in shadows, Lucian continues, his voice steady now. My own brother proved that family means nothing in my world. I have spent 5 years trusting no one, feeling nothing. Then a homeless widow with $78 in her pocket showed me more courage than 100 armed men. She showed me that strength is not about power. It is about choosing to stand when everything tells you to fall. He turns to face her. In the golden light, his face is softer, younger somehow, like the scar is less prominent, like the weight he carries is finally being set down. I am asking for a chance, he says. Not as the man who bought your debt. As the man who has thought about you every single day for a year. As a man who understands that walls built to survive can become the prison that kills you. Vivien takes both his hands. Her thumbs trace the lines of his palms, the scars there, the evidence of his life. You gave me back my life. You gave me back my son's future. You asked nothing in return. Do you know how rare that is? How extraordinary. The penthouse door opens again. Noah appears, Pietro beside him, the boys' tutoring session complete. The child runs to his mother, then looks up at Lucian with recognition and no fear in his eyes. Are you staying for dinner? Noah asks simply, the question carrying no weight, just a child's hope that the world will be kind to people he loves. Lucian looks to Vivien. She nods, smiling through tears. Yes, Lucian says. If you will have me. They stand together as the sun continues its descent, as the city lights begin to arrive like stars being born, as the evening deepens into something true and necessary. Vivien whispers the words that have lived in her heart since that terrible night, since the beginning of everything. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only love can do that. If this story moved you, do not just watch and leave. Hit that like button right now. Share this with someone who needs to hear that redemption is real, that love can grow in the unlikeliest places, that a second chance is not a fantasy, it is a promise waiting to be kept. Subscribe and turn on notifications because tomorrow we are bringing you another story that will remind you why you believe in transformation. Drop a comment telling us, have you ever been saved by a stranger? We read every single one. This is where broken people become whole, where stories matter, where you matter. We will see you in the next one.